Hi, welcome to Venture Scaler. I'm Sasha, 3-time head of people at venture-backed startups.
And I'm Jake, 3 times ops and growth leader from the venture-backed startup circuit as well. And we're here dropping all of our best tips on how to scale your startup.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm here with Jake and Gregg Scoresby, who's the founder and CEO of CampusLogic, which is a Phoenix-based ed tech SaaS platform that helps higher ed institutions digitize, automate their financial aid and scholarships. I'm sure Gregg could say it much better than I could. But I had a chance to work with Gregg many moons ago when CampusLogic was very early in their development, and I'm really delighted to have Gregg here with us. I'll let you do a deep dive into your background now, but that was a snapshot of all the things that I love about you.
All right, well, how about a shallow dive? Let's do a shallow dive.
Shallow dive, sounds good.
As Sasha mentioned, I'm Gregg here, and let me talk about CampusLogic briefly. CampusLogic is similar to what Sasha said. We're a student financial success platform. So I think a lot of people don't realize that 3 million college students drop out every year for financial reasons. We're trying to fix that. So we have a suite of software products that make the entire end-to-end financial aid experience mobile, simple, and personalized. So our customers are colleges, universities. We sell to them. And most students don't know our brand or our name, which is fine. But we work with about 750 colleges, universities in the United States, and trying to transform the experience for students to make it mobile, simple, personalized, and eliminate the barriers that the financial barriers that get in the way to both enrollment and completion.
That's awesome.
Drop the mic.
Wow, 3 students drop out because of financial aid. I had no idea.
Yes, in fact, we did a survey also that in partnership with Gallup just earlier this year, and found that 3 out of 4 students say that financial constraints got in the way of their academic attainment. So there's this whole big movement in higher education that's been going on for years called student success. And what people really mean when they say student success is it's a euphemism for retention, right? When they say student success, they mean retention. But almost none of the efforts that happen at colleges, universities center on removing the financial barriers. They're mostly around academic barriers, but financial reasons are always the number 1 or number 2 reason in my experience at schools why students drop out, and there just hasn't been enough focus on that. So that includes, making the process of scholarships and grants and loans and helping people make the right financial decisions and not overborrow. Those things need to be in software and the process just made easier.
Nice. So I think I read that you raised a really large round of $120 million fairly recently. So congrats on that. That's really exciting. But I want to skip back a little bit and think back to your Series A. Thinking back there, what was the single best decision that you made after raising that Series A round of funding?
It's a really good question. You tend to learn a lot after the fact, right? When you look back and realize the mistakes you made. One of the things that I realized is so important there in the early stage, that's really where creating the right board dynamic really became critical. So there was a partner at a venture firm in Utah the venture firm was called Peak Ventures. It's now called Album VC. One of the partners there, his name is Sid Cromanhook. Peak wasn't an investor, but I convinced him to invest personally. And one of the reasons I did that and to join my board was Sid had started and scaled a company an education technology company that he later sold to Chegg. And so that experience and bringing that operating experience into the company was really, really important into the boardroom. And then I was fortunate enough to have other investor relationships that came onto the board then too. Clay Mask also was my first seed investor. He is the CEO of Keep, which is formerly Infusionsoft, backed by Bain, Goldman Sachs, and other investors. And he really had scaled a large software company here in the Phoenix area. And I just found his mentorship and operating mindset, even though he didn't come from education technology, I just found his point of view to be so valuable in company building, particularly around culture and making the right decisions around team and things like that. So, and then learning how to manage a board is usually a new skill for a lot of us when we're building companies. So, and board dynamics are always different, but learning to create the right board that is both valuable to us as leaders and then also creates governance for shareholders takes some skill and practice. But when the board dynamics work, it becomes an amplifier, or it becomes a lever for the CEO. It's not just someone I need to report to, but it becomes really a tool that we can use to strengthen our companies.
Nice. So past that, like as you continue to grow and scale, how has your role changed as CEO over the last few years? And how have you personally scaled up to meet the challenges that you've faced through each phase of growth?
Well, even before our Series A, one of the things that I became really, really clear, and I've told this story a lot, but I've used this expression a lot, but we successfully built one of the world's worst pieces of software in 2013. And so, and it was hard. It wasn't because we didn't try hard. We put every financial resource we had into it. We put all of our skills and effort, but it wasn't enough. And one of the things as I reflected back on that was missing was, I maybe had some success in other areas and thought, hey, I could be successful in this area around building scalable, multi-tenant software as a service that is highly secure, that you can sell to colleges, universities. I definitely assumed that I had the skills to do this or could bring people together to do it. And so one of the things I realized through that was I was really late in finding the right talent to come, someone who would be better at, so I try to think about the thing on the team or in the company that I was worst at, and tried to bring someone onto the team that could help me solve that problem. So Chris Chumley came and joined me in that role. He built the world's first cloud-based student information system. He moved from Denver to join CampusLogic early. And that was because that was my weakest area around product development. And it was what he was the best at in education technology. And that's just happened repeatedly over the years as I've tried to peel off different roles as we've scaled bigger and getting that team to work together. That's probably the one thing that I've tried to do or be good at, is being self-aware enough to know, hey, I don't have the right skill set in this area, and I need to find someone who's better than I will ever be at this thing, and find a way to get them to join the company, even in the case where you might have limited resources. How do I get the right person to do this thing that I need done here to join me on this journey?
So in hiring those key executives or partners early on and later stage, you mentioned needing to shed off something that you weren't great at, but how do you know it's the right time to hire a COO versus a CFO versus a CRO? And at what point in the business life cycle do you bring them in?
Well, one of the things I've done a lot of over the years is I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I spend more time recruiting than any other CEO I know, and I think everybody should spend more time doing that. And I mentioned that in answer. I'll get to the answer. How do you know when the right time to do it is? When I hired Chris, I actually wasn't looking for. He's our chief operating officer. He's been here for since we launched our first product in 2014. He joined shortly after we launched our first product, and then he's been here, so coming up on, it's been over 6 years now. And he's always been our chief operating officer, but originally I was looking for just a head of product. In fact, I found someone on LinkedIn I was excited about, and she lived in Philadelphia, and she said, I'm not really, I'm not going to move to Phoenix. I'm not going to do that, but you should talk to the guy that I used to work for, and his name's Chris Chelney. And so she introduced me to him. And so I met him through that relationship. And I think one thing that I've tried to do is be open-minded to sometimes people come along that are not exactly the role that you were looking for, but if you are a little bit flexible in how you think about your organizational design. So Chris was maybe a little more experienced than I was hoping to get. I had to reach a little farther financially to get him, but it just has proven to be a really great decision. So I'd say if you're out recruiting all the time and you get to know a lot of people, it gives you a lot more flexibility in trying to put the pieces together in the org chart, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
I'm curious with Chris specifically, since he joined so early, how were you able to convince him to move his family from Denver to Phoenix and live in a trailer for months and months? I've heard the stories. How did you show the value of CampusLogic and why join?
So one thing I would say to every CEO, every founder, every senior leader listening to this, it's easy to forget this, but the number one thing that you have in the early days of your company to recruit is your mission. And so if you find people that fall in love with your mission, well, first of all, you have to be in love with your mission yourself, right? If you're not in love with what you're doing, people don't want to join someone who's not really committed to the cause here. But when you're committed to the cause and people can see you're all in on the cause and people can connect, I believe almost every person in the world wants to connect their personal purpose and their personal passion to doing meaningful work. Nobody wants to go to work every day and come home saying, hey, it was so great, I did nothing today. I did nothing impactful, nothing purposeful. Like, nobody wants to do that, right? Everybody wants to feel purpose and connectedness. So part of this is Chris felt a lot of passion around, hey, I want to build great scalable software that transforms student experiences and makes a difference in the lives of schools and students. So part of it is you just meet people along the way where there's a connection in purpose that goes. That's the best recruiting tool you have. And then with Chris, it took me about 6 months to recruit him, and then there was a window that opened up in his employment that he was willing to do it. And he would even tell you he wasn't totally sure this was going to work out, but he was willing to make a bet on this. And we made a bunch of progress over a period of time. And after the school year finished, his wife and his kids moved here to join him. But he was commuting from Denver to Phoenix every week, and it is true, he lived in an RV for 9 months while he was doing that. But a lot of people are willing to do things that you don't think they're willing to do if they can feel total connection to a purpose or a mission or a cause, because that's what we all want. We all want purpose. We all want connection. We all want belonging. And nobody wants to work at a place where they feel like they don't belong or they don't have passion for the purpose. And so you want to make sure you put that front and center in your recruiting efforts to do that, and then find the right people. And then lastly, what Chris would tell you is he's had more autonomy in this job than any other place he's worked. So you don't get to recruit people and then micromanage the heck out of them. You gotta find great talent and then get the barriers out of their way and partner with them so they can do the best work of their career. So I think those are a couple of things that I would just, in summary, mission's your best recruiting tool you have. Lots of people will do things you don't think they're willing to do or not able to do because they care so much about the mission like you do. And then, and so put that front and center in your recruiting efforts. But then after you recruit top talent, make sure you're creating highly autonomous environments, because top talent always values autonomy.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So much that hits home for me. So that's really great. Sasha, do you have anything that you wanted to follow up there?
I did. You talked about mission and culture, but values is a big part of that too. And as someone, an ex-campus logician, I don't know what you guys are calling yourselves now. I liked that though. I know values played a big part, but how have the CampusLogic values how informed your hiring process or your company culture, or even the way that you built products?
Yeah, well, a couple things. I mean, values are are always something interesting to talk about, because if you ask a company what their values are, if people don't know what the values are, that's probably a signal. If they can't tell you how they've seen the values show up in decision making, that's also a signal. So it's one thing to have values that are named, it's another thing to have them be pervasive inside the company. So just a real quick on the origin story. In 2014 or so, it was right after Chris came, and our first product was starting to really work and take off finally. And we were getting ready to launch our second product. It became clear to me, hey, we're going to scale something here, and we're going to be hiring a lot of people in the coming years. And so we want to make sure we find people that want to behave like we want to behave. And so that's what values are, really. They're behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's how you do the work. So purpose is why you do the work, mission is where you're headed, and values are how we're going to behave along the way, right? And so when you think about values, uh, I ask our employees at the time, there were only about 20 of us. We have about 180 employees now. We had about 20 at the time. And I ask everybody, hey, give me one word to describe the best place you've ever worked, or the best place you'd ever want to work. Or, like, it could be one or two words, but keep these in like super short phrases or words. And from those 20 people, I got about 150 responses and grouped them together in where things made sense. And out of that came 7, phrases. And some of the words were things like effort, work hard, ambition, initiative, and do our best. And out of that, I pulled those kind of words together, and out of that came the value: we work hard and give our best. Because we want to work with people that work hard and show up and just give the best they have, no matter how good their best is. Like, everybody needs to show up and give their best. We don't want anybody to mail it in, right? Just show up and mail it in. And so that was another one example. Another example was, people would say kindness, nice, like take care of each other, like, just be kind. And so that's where the value, we're nice and we take care of each other, came out. So we ended up with these 7 values, and that's one thing to come up with them, and it's another thing to make them fit into into the culture. So we've done something for years now. Every couple of weeks we have a company meeting, and in that company meeting, we will do shout outs, and I give the same instruction every time. You can shout out. In fact, we're doing it now in the global pandemic here. We're doing it across Zoom here, and but we do the same thing. I'll say, hey, here's give someone a shout out if you can. Tie it to some specific action they did and the impact it had, and tie it to the values that you saw. And I'll put the values up on the screen, and people start to describe the behavior that they saw in their coworkers using the values. Or they'll say, hey, we need to make this decision because one of our values is, we keep commitments and do the right thing. We told this school we were going to do this. And so, like, we're people who keep commitments and do the right thing. So we're going to do it. It's not convenient. It's not easy, but we said we'd do it. We're going to do it. And that is just, it sure makes managing the company a lot easier when you're the leader, when you've got these sort of self-governance that happens with really strong values. And you have to make those values persist and be meaningful in the company.
I had a manager describe values to me as like these are like the rules, the guidelines, like how you make decisions when I'm not around to tell you what to do or what decision to make. And tying everything back to values, like it helps guide that thinking and, oh, I should make this decision this way because that ties more closely with our values versus like it's the easier thing to do. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you know, and it's always helpful. This is something I wish I would have done even more. We've done this a little bit after the fact, but whenever you can connect, uh, I call them core texts or like books to support the values. It also, because even short phrases, even though they're better than individual words, people still want to go deeper on what that means. So one of the things uh, I think I'll use one example of the value I mentioned. We're nice and we take care of each other. I read the book Radical Candor a few years ago, and one of the things I really like about that book is the simple principle of care personally and challenge directly. And I think that what I always worry about with the value of we're nice and we take care of each other is, hey, Sasha doesn't want to tell me that I've done something that needs to be fixed because she's just being nice and she's not going to give me direct feedback. So, you know, whenever you have values, you as a leader, that are strong in your culture, you're going to be spending a lot of time, and this is worth the investment. You're going to be spending a lot of time clarifying what those values mean, and a set of core books clarify that. I mean, part of being nice includes being very direct, you know, and not mean, but kind and direct is what we really want, because directness is efficient. And directness is people can receive directness if it's done kindly, and they can take that feedback and they can improve. And everybody wants to be better at their craft. So I do think you always have to think about having values, making sure they have meaning and they persist for the long term.
Yeah, I like that, a core set of books. I'm gonna think more about that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. It's good.
Sorry.
Well, and part of that is like you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's so much great management thinking out there, right? There's so much great content out there. And if you read something that's been transformative for you as a leader, then and it lines up really well to your outlook in life, you need to make sure everybody on your team reads that book, right? So that you create more unity around some of those principles.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm curious, have you hired to your values? How do you evaluate if a potential new hire will align with the core beliefs and behaviors that you think are essential for CampusLogic?
Yeah, we don't always get this right, but when we've let people go, almost entirely, you know, when you think about it, it's because there's a values miss. Very rarely, in fact, I can't think of a single time where we let someone go because they weren't smart enough. You know, and so it's not usually intellect. And, you know, one of our values is about effort, but I would say very rarely have we ever let someone go because of effort. It's because of something else. Like if you're a jerk, like if there's toxic behavior, that doesn't happen here. It doesn't persist here. And so it is hard. And we you know, whenever you let people go, almost entirely you realize there was something in their behavior that just didn't fit with what we're doing. And behaviors, again, are our values. And so it was a miss in the hiring process. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to create a set of questions that get to the values, but recognizing that values are behaviors, using behavioral interviewing is obviously a core technique in getting to how people work and how people behave. So questions like, and there's a lot been written about behavioral interviewing, but tell me about a time when the outcome for a particular project or assignment wasn't clear, and you know what did you do when in that situation? And if you're trying to get to the behavior, that might be a question you might ask if you're trying to get to the value of resilience or something like that, or initiative or innovation or something like that. But you need to develop a set of questions that get to the specific behaviors you're trying to get to with with your values, and then have people describe experiences that that they've had or done historically. And when you do reference check, make sure you're reference checking against those stories and against those values and behaviors, so that you're trying to get a holistic picture. And then if you have concerns in the interview process about a particular set of values, I think it's really helpful to tell the candidate, hey, I just don't know enough about you to feel comfortable on this particular value. And if, or something you said doesn't resonate. And if people get defensive in that conversation, it's probably evidence that might not work out. But usually people want you to, people that have strong values that will align with what you have, almost always, they want to lean into that conversation too, because if we want to show up where we belong, we want to feel like we belong and, fit in, where people share my own values as well. So I do think that you get at this through questions and reference checks, but you have to be pretty intentional about the questions that you ask.
Awesome.
All right, so time for some reflection. So through all of those rounds of funding, which you've had quite a few, the key hires you talked about, going from 20 employees to 180 employees, what would you say has been like the biggest mistake you made or biggest regret that you have from that time?
Well, let me give a sort of a semi-cop-out answer a little bit here. So there have been a lot of mistakes, and I'll share some. I'll talk more about probably some of the product mistakes early on, and where I've maybe overmanaged. I very rarely have felt like I've undermanaged. It's usually where I feel like I've overmanaged. But I will also say that as a leader, I'm really happy with where we are now as a company. I don't think we're perfect. We make a lot of mistakes all the time. But if you're happy where you are at the moment, you do need to embrace a little bit some of the mistakes you made. And that's true in life as well. I mean, part of being happy with where you are now is recognizing that the mistakes you made and the associated learnings you had have contributed to your current state. So, I guess I don't have a lot of regrets just because I'm happy with what we're doing now as a company. I think we're making a tremendous difference in the lives of students and the schools that serve them. I will say where I've made mistakes mostly have been around, there have been some hiring mistakes, but much less of those and much more of just getting out of the way of people. I've said this before too. One thing I've thought about that wasn't obvious to me when we started the company, that most of us are happier in a particular stage in a company. There's a lot of people that are, I want to create the foundation of for the CRM or the foundation. I want to put in the first sales process, and I want to make this thing work. I want to put structure in this. But once there's structure and I have to start managing people, I may like it a little bit less. Or when I have to manage managers, that's another breaking point for a lot of us as leaders here. So one thing that I don't know if I'd say it's a mistake I've made, but I've probably encouraged people to stay at CampusLogic too long in some cases, or maybe kept people too long, when in fact, looking back, it was obvious to them that their superpower was in this like $0 to $1 million annual recurring revenue stage, where so many things go wrong in that stage, and they are just great. They're generalist and they are great at that thing, and they're utility players and they can do whatever. Or they're great in that $1 to $10 million annual recurring revenue, but once it starts getting bigger than that, they lose interest. And so I do think there's some semi-logical breaking spots where you start getting to, I have to manage more people than I really want to manage, so I want to get back into a smaller company. And that's not unhealthy. It can feel unhealthy when someone's leaving. It can feel hurtful when someone's leaving, but it's actually pretty healthy and pretty natural when you think about it. And so we shouldn't try too hard to make people stay or like fit into something that isn't comfortable for them or comfortable for the company. It slows their progress and development, and it slows the development of the company. So I think sometimes I probably have not been as thoughtful about that, the recognizing that some people just are more drawn to and have more value, and they're just happier at different sizes of companies and different stages of companies.
No, that's super true. Speaking of different sizes and stages, I'd be curious around your compensation and benefits philosophy. Do you have one? And if so, has it changed as you've scaled?
Yes, good question. So one of the from day one in the company, one thing that was really important to me was the principle of everybody an owner. And that's not true. Not every business has that philosophy. But for me, I wanted to build a company where I knew we were going to raise outside money from venture capital firms and private equity firms over a long period of time. And I knew there would be chances or opportunities in one form or another for wealth creation to be had. And I really wanted all of our employees to benefit from that. And, it's been very, very valuable to me, very satisfying to me when we've had chances to sell stock and I've had someone come to me and say, I just was able to sell a little bit of stock, and I was able to sell enough stock to buy a house, and I never thought I'd be able to buy a house or pay off my student loans, or something, a really material event for them, and that feels really good. And so that we've done that from day one, and so just the general compensation philosophy, I want everybody to be an owner and have ownership in the company. And then and that's been true and continues to be true and always will be true. One thing that's changed a little bit, a few years ago, and I've struggled with the right bonus programs. To me, bonus programs do a couple of things. Bonus programs can be used to reward people, obviously, but it can also be used to align people. And so to me, it makes sense. We sell to school, colleges, universities. We're selling an enterprise level product, and sales cycles are long. So we have a sales comp plan that's typical sales, enterprise sales comp plan, but everybody else in the company is on the same compensation plan, and I wanted everyone to orient around a single metric. So we don't have individual bonus plans outside of sales reps. We don't have individual bonus plans. We have a company level bonus plan, and if we hit our quarterly revenue target, everybody participates in the plan. And there's a little bit of differentiation on how we allocate that up. I mean, if someone's not performing well, they wouldn't get anything, but they're getting a specific message that says, hey, you didn't, this last quarter was rough, and you didn't do these things, and your contribution was rough here. So you're not getting an allocation, or getting a smaller part. And that forces a performance conversation at least on a regular, I don't like doing that on an annual basis, but quarterly or more. But so it forces our leaders to do that. But that's an exception, really, right? Most of our 70 to 80% of our company is getting kind of roughly the same percentage of their salary every single quarter. In fact, it's actually 80 to 85%. And then maybe like 5 to 10% are in this kind of needs improvement area. And then 5 to 10% are, hey, you did something off the chart, outstanding last quarter. It was specific in the quarter, and they might get a slightly higher allocation. So, but this is all the same plan, and this plan is funded by revenue attainment. So we all win by the same metric. So product needs to build product that enables us to continue to grow revenue. And our customer success needs to retain customers. Otherwise, we won't get our revenue goal. Marketing needs to continue to market to customers and support our overall revenue goals. Otherwise, we won't be able to participate. So that's new for us the last couple of years, and it's also created a quarterly cadence for me where I'll do a quarterly review with every one of our leaders of every single employee. We call it calibration, where we're recalibrating and calibrating on performance every quarter. And so that's been newer for us. And I'd say it works pretty well. It's not perfect, but it works pretty well and forces performance related conversations, and also allows us to recognize top talent on a quarterly basis and figure out how are we going to continue to develop and advance this top talent.
I love that.
Ew.
Jake, before you dive into your last question, I have an impromptu, crazy question, but diversity, inclusion, and belonging has been on my mind quite a bit. And I know, Greg, this is something that you care about a lot, but how have you personally, or how has the business tried to advance DEI goals over over the duration of the company? I know you've cared about this since starting CampusLogic.
Yeah, when we had 20 employees or so early on, I thought, it was like 18 guys and Sasha and one other person, or like something like that. Like it was, and we didn't have a typical bro culture, but it was a lot of dudes. And so, and in fact, a lot of white guys, to be honest. And part of that is probably a little bit geographically where we live, but I would say that it occurred to me then that, hey, we need to do a way better job to just create a more interesting place. I do believe if you pursue diversity, equity, inclusion, I'll say diversity in particular, because you think it's the right thing to do, it's hard to sustain something that you think is the right thing to do, because not everybody thinks it's the right thing to do. If it's the right business thing to do, and it's going to drive the right business metric, and people really believe that, that's sustainable. And so it is the right thing to do. But one of the reasons it's the right thing to do, and I'm talking about diversity here, is the different perspectives you can bring to problem solving, you'll just solve problems faster. I mean, this has been replicated in study after study. And so if you want to create more shareholder value for your investors, for you, for your employees, you want to create more value for your customers and build products that reflect, that solve problems for them and their customers, you need to have really diverse perspectives to do that. So it's a business strategy tool to drive diversity. So I was really focused on gender equity several years ago, and I'll say gender diversity, followed by gender equity, to constantly look at comp and opportunities. So, and I was really proud of the fact that half of our executive team is female, about 60% of our overall leadership team is female, and about 45% of the overall company is female, which for a software company is really, really remarkable. However, there are a lot of events that happen in your life that make you wonder, make you rethink things. So I don't think that I've been very thoughtful about this in the last couple of years. George Floyd's killing has had a particular impact on everybody. I'm not unique there, but it's made me rethink, hey, how are we showing up for our Black employees versus our white employees, and how are we doing? Like, we're pretty underrepresented on Hispanic employees. And so we've tried to be more intentional, and some of that's been pre-George Floyd, but probably accelerated since George Floyd's killing, but tried to be more intentional about our employer branding. I think we still have some more work to do there. But that's been a little bit of the evolution about how I've been thinking about this. And by the way, the Me Too movement was a big part of our conversation a few years ago, right? And so some of the gender equity conversations were influenced by that. So some of these societal events, I want to change. I want these things to change my own heart and my own mind, and by extension, the company. And so I'm thankful for, the positive impact some of these negative societal things have had on me and the company. I do think it's helpful to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion as distinct things. It's easy to blend those together as one word, but diversity is sort of like, you can think of diversity, I think, as how diverse are we? That's sort of a quantitative measure. Like you could have high diversity and crappy inclusion, really, right? So we've got a diverse employee set, but nobody feels included. They don't have a sense of belonging. They don't feel like I belong here. So you need to look at diversity as am I bringing in diverse thought and opinion and experience into the company? And equity, am I providing equal opportunity and equal access to all of my diverse population? And then an inclusion is how people feel. And so measuring each of those things, how diverse am I, how equitable am I, and how inclusive am I think can really be, and then creating the conversation internally around those three things. It really has provided a better framework for me than just blending all these things together, because they are discrete concepts and you can be good at one and not good at another. And your work in this area is never done. I mean, that's the thing as a leader you have to recognize, is that nobody ever says, we're just too diverse. We're just too inclusive. We got too much equity going on. Nobody ever says that. And so you just have to recognize that if it's not part of the conversation on a regular basis, something's probably not right, and you're never going to feel like you're too successful in that area.
Nice. I like that. It was really thoughtful. Thank you. All right. So last question. Let's close with this. So this is more for like founder advice. What's the most common mistake you see startup founders make? And what's one piece of advice that you find yourself giving startup founders over and over?
Well, I made a presentation last week that actually Sasha saw, so I'll use the same thing from this. A friend of mine, Heidi Janenga, who was one of the co-founders of WebPT, a remarkable success story in Phoenix. I don't know their revenue, but they've got 300 plus employees. I'm going to guess they're over 100 million in annual recurring revenue, and but just a remarkable success story, backed by Battery Ventures and now Warburg Pincus. I mean, both remarkable investors that they've been part of. She and I were on a panel earlier this year, and this question was posed to us, and I went first and gave this answer of, hey, I think that everybody, founders need to go big, because a lot of times founders are just focused on, I just need to build this thing and then just sell it, because it's really hard work. I just need to build this thing and like sell it, or it's going to be better when I get to here. And so founders sometimes have a short point of view. So my message was, go big, go long, go big. Like, build something to scale, like lean into leadership, lean into scale, like go big. And Heidi went next on the panel, and she said, I'm actually going to say the exact opposite. And she said, more or less, she said, go small. But what she meant by that, and she clarified, she said this really a lot better than I will now or could say. She said, I remember when I got some advice from someone early in my company, and it was just, hey, solve the problem right in front of me, like fix it and like get it right and fix it and nail it. And my message was scale it, and her message was nail it, right? That was her like message, and both are true. But one thing that's really hard as a founder, very, very hard as a founder, is to recognize the shift that you're constantly going through. There's always something to fix. So fix this thing, but don't lose sight of the fact that if you can build a big, meaningful company, you can create better lives for your employees. And that is, I just think the promise of company building is super powerful. I think when you create a healthy culture in your company, then you make people's family lives better. You create more economic opportunity for them and their kids. You create a better sense of purpose when your employees can connect their personal purpose to the company's purpose and the mission. And so I think, and if you create something that's big and meaningful and purposeful, you can really transform the lives of your employees and the customers that you serve. So I'm a big believer in trying to build something that's mission driven, big, and impactful. And but at the same time, you're in the early days, you're constantly just like, I got this bug in my software. I got to fix this right now. Who cares about going big? I got to just fix this thing. And so I would say, like, do both. Like, fix the problem, get very focused on the immediate priority, and don't lose sight of that. Like, fix this thing right now, and stay and be very, very focused. Like, focus is key, but don't lose sight of the fact of the opportunity to do something transformative and scale. So I would say, and there's a book that has this same title, but nail it and scale it. You got to do both.
Nice. That was great. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Getting you to the answers to your questions, very thoughtful, super insightful. Thank you for spending time with us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I always love talking about company building. I think it's an important thing to do. I think it's a noble thing to do. And one of the things that makes me a little sad right now that's happening, some of this is because of student debt, some of this is because of pandemic, but company creation and formation is really low right now, and we need more people to be able to build meaningful, sustainable businesses. And so I think, to the extent that your podcast and other podcasts and tools can help give people the confidence to keep going and build something meaningful, I think it's a critically important time to do that.
Couldn't have said that better myself.
Well, I love you, Gregg. Thank you so much for coming on our show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey you, thanks for listening to Venture Scaler. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below so you never miss an episode. The show is also available on all podcast platforms, so you can find it anywhere you want to listen. And if you found the information helpful, share it with a friend, family member, or anyone else that you think could benefit. You're also welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm Sasha Robinson, and it's Jake Huber. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.